Welcome back to another episode of the Real Life Abbott Elementary, a career readiness podcast where we give you the tea on what it's like as young professionals transitioning into the workforce. This episode was made possible by Greylock Federal Credit Union, a trusted community partner here in Berkshire County. Yes, board member Chris Flores, whose dedication to youth mentorship drives this work forward. Jamie Harvey, CEO of Agilion, a business and technology company committed to impact and innovation. And Ellen Gabriels, a Yes donor, who is also our founding director's former 7th grade English teacher. Now let's get into this episode.
Things have certainly changed and shifted as they have consistently. I don't know if you remember or took note, but what is the last moment that you recall?
Cueing the That's So Raven flashback.
The biggest thing that just recently happened is that the school director, so the founder of the school, literally just took personal leave as of 2 weeks ago, all the way until January. And so if she, the owner, founder, everything of the school is stressed out, what about the small people? But anyhow, around that time, my co-teacher, the French one, so how I think I've explained before, I have a co-English teacher, and those are the ones that keep leaving. And then I have a co-French teacher that we share the same homeroom. So my co-French teacher or co-homeroom teacher at that time was just no, if I don't get my raise, Olivia, I would hate to leave you and keep the trend going, but I need it. And I have various other options that I'm exploring right now that are also showing me interest. But my intention is to get this raise that I've been waiting for now 2 years, whatever. I personally wasn't eligible for the raise because it's only for people who had worked there for at least one academic school year. So I was kind of unfazed, but I did understand the urgency of the situation, as it was withheld funds, and then post-COVID, they were supposed to get certain bonuses that they didn't get, that they said they would be transferred into it was just a mess. So she, in reading that email, just applied to various other positions in school districts, not even as a lead teacher, but as a learning specialist on French language support for private schools that are paying her $10,000 extra on her current salary to literally not have a class.
More money, less work.
Exactly. And that seems to be the common trend right now for public and private sectors. Charter schools are very much right now because their funding is strictly based off of enrollment and budgeting. So it's interesting to see how that works. But yeah, she was starting applying for next year because she's I don't even want to continue to do this or be in this nature of things going into the new year, new school year. But she's I wouldn't want to leave you in the middle of the school year, but this is just too much. So anyhow, she was applying to various places, and literally 2 weeks later, around the time before Christmas break, she's Olivia, no way. My dream school to work in actually called me into an interview, and it went really well. But they actually wanted to expedite the position instead of being for next school year to start in mid-January. And I'm girl, you're playing around. There's no way. And she's no, I've been trying to go to the school. And I was Lord have mercy. Not only on the other side do I have a wavering space of never being able to have a consistent co-teacher, but now one of my closest friends at work and my co-homeroom teacher who's now considering to leave. Long story short, she ultimately decided to take the job. So she left, and I don't know where we were at.
I think maybe they hired someone new.
Yes. So yes, they hired someone new, and they literally, their last day was last Wednesday. They lasted maybe 4 weeks. 4 weeks. 4 weeks. Yeah, she came and went in that short period of time. And I actually had the most hope in this one. She was a little bit older
But she only ever worked with special education students and never led a classroom. So I could have told you like 6 different reasons why being put in this position wasn't going to work, but they were desperate, and that's what they get for being desperate. But anyhow, in this moment, they hired a TA. So essentially what I was doing last year of like a student teaching downstairs to come upstairs with us. She's also, she actually was in my cohort, but she just was like behind 2 classes. So she's about to graduate in May. So she was literally in my position where I was in last year, but they hired her as a teacher's assistant because she was done with her student teaching program. So I know her. She's familiar because student teaching, she did like in first grade downstairs, and now she's coming upstairs into second grade. And she's been extremely helpful this past week and a half because like she already knows the flow of things. It's easy for me to communicate with her because she did go to Howard, like literally was in my cohort. And I feel like literally second grade is like the joke of the school currently because it's like we can't keep any teacher. At this point, I am the only teacher from the beginning of the year that is still there. Mind you, I'm a first year teacher, and it's just been insane. But yeah, so this past week has been the first week where essentially administration came together, vaguely keeping us in the loop about what was going on behind the scenes. But I suggested and expressed to them that at this point, I would just stop trying to fill that position. I know certainly I'm not going to do that double work, and they know that I'm not going to do that, but to, in whatever legalities that you can, to uphold the TA's position into like essentially the long-term sub, and don't bother just hiring another lead teacher, because this past week and a half really has been probably the smoothest for maybe a month, like maybe the past 2-3 months, because she just, like, as I mentioned, like she knows what's up. We have those connecting points. Like it's easy for her to understand what I'm saying and just share knowledge with her because she executes. The past people who have come in, it was like so much to learn on top of being adapting to the school culture. So I think it was just very overwhelming for them. But yeah, funny. Another one left. 2 people left since the last time we talked. 2.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to hear that. That is a really good leadership suggestion. At some point, you realize it's better to have a smaller undermanned team than have a team at capacity
Mm-hmm.
if the team at capacity can't work together well.
Yeah. And at this point, like also the kids and myself are getting tired of trying to invest ourselves into someone who just ultimately leaves. The parents are already pissed. The PTO meetings are crazy. Our family engagement person for our school literally came in because she sits in on all the PTO meetings, like per grade level. And they're like, yeah, like the biggest conversation, obviously, is teacher retention and consistent communication. So like there are basically like ratting second grade, and I think similar problems also happening in pre-K out for like just the inconsistency in presence and the school communicating who is coming into the classroom, who is doing certain things, like who can they pinpoint on certain days, and leadership. And I mean, at this point, I'm confused because, as I mentioned, I am the only consistent figure in the second grade since the beginning of the year. But at the same time, I mentally and emotionally cannot carry that burden of consistent communication for my homeroom and another homeroom. But also those who they've been coming in and filling those gaps also don't really know or have backing or even the support or knowledge to be able to uphold the expectation of communication. So it's literally like a hot mess. Like it's just hilarious. And every time someone sees me, they're like, "Oh, you're the second grade teacher upstairs that's trying to hold it together," and or like they'll be like, "Oh, we're so sorry. Like this is your first year teaching too." I said, "Okay." We did our mid-year school survey about looking forward, and essentially it pairs with our mid-year evaluation. Luckily enough, well, not necessarily luckily, but I guess less awkward for me You're supposed to fill out the mid-year survey or looking forward survey, and then you're supposed to have your evaluation and talk to your supervisor and talk about, like, are you coming back next year? What are your plans for next year? Would you like to stay in the grade level that you currently are in? Ask the questions along the line of, like, what supports can be implemented, just a basic mid-year evaluation. And then they also evaluate your contribution in terms of meeting learning standards and goals and, hoopla hoopla. But yeah, I luckily got the survey late, so I didn't directly tell my supervisor that I am probably about 5% in and about 95% out in terms of not coming back next year. Teaching in general, this is too much. It's too much.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense to me. One thing you were making me think about is just with, yes, the angle of mentorship maybe even feels more effective because the approach is to help solve challenges like this that come up for the students that they may have to deal
Mm-hmm.
with teachers or the administration or the school culture, as opposed to trying to solve the problem from within the system directly as a teacher, where you just have either certain handicaps in terms of the resources or support you have to implement certain changes, or the structure of the job itself. You're asked to do more things than just teach, and what those more things are really other people's jobs.
Other people's jobs. Mm-hmm.
It's just like not a good overall company structure to be successful. And I think that makes it really difficult. It's like trying to build a house on the sand and you continue to wonder why it keeps falling down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually read something recently. I'm not even sure where I read it, but somewhere recently that, like, stated something along the lines that since COVID
Mm-hmm.
and now stepping out of COVID, teachers have really felt that pressure of the inequities within the education system, and they've been highlighted extremely. Especially now that certain grants, fundings, and resources have kind of like rolled back in certain districts and communities, because it's like, oh, well, you're not getting that public funding for those Chromebooks anymore, so you can't take that home. Or we're not getting the funding for everyone to have free and reduced lunch every day, so now you have to pay again. Or we're not getting the government funding to support in after school programs, so now we got to close up around 5. So it's like things like that are adding pressures back onto teachers and administrators that are really highlighting the fact that schools, especially public and public charter schools, are upheld to very unrealistic standards of what that expectation is from them in particular communities. For example, we're expected to be doctors, caretakers, uncles, aunts, role models, tutors. We're expected to be data analysts. We're expected to just do a plethora of things that go extremely beyond the parameters of the founding four corners of what a school should and is meant to be. And that burden is falling on those who are directly connected to students. Well, on the flip side, I do understand, like, yes, as an educator, I'm stepping into a public service type job in which I'm accepting the role to be able to teach a child and educate them. And that doesn't explicitly mean I'm just following along curriculum or abiding by certain standards. Yes, I'm trying to develop them as a human and engage them in various social environments and community aspects. And there's things that go into that, but that is still explicitly teaching.
Mm.
It's when I'm stepping out of those parameters and I'm expected to go to diagnostic meetings and I literally filled out an 105 question survey about a student, literally because the specialist that came in didn't want to do his job. Well, I mean, I'm not saying he didn't want to do his job, but he didn't want to do his job to the extent in which he could have. Like, he came in and observed. You could have asked me a few questions. I understand a quick brief survey or even like a debrief. Like, we could have talked about some of the behaviors of the student, but you had me fill out 105 questions. Like, you sat and saw him for a week. What did you not get? That's your job. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so things like that
Mm-hmm.
really blow my mind completely. And then from that point, I was expected prior to the specialist, because we have a student that I certainly recommended in the beginning of the year that he should have just either go to first grade or be put in an ABA classroom, because he isn't a great fit for second grade, academically, physically, socially. And so the first thing that they said is, okay, track data. And I'm like, okay, well, it's been 2 weeks and I can tell you that he doesn't know his ABCs, but I guess that's not enough for y'all. So, then at that point, I'm over here having to prove the upfront in which I've provided. Like, you hired me to be a teacher. You hired me to do my job. I'm not necessarily saying I'm not going to listen to you, but if you hired me to do my job, let me do my job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you didn't trust me to do the job, you should have hired somebody else? Like, I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm saying. So it's like the whole aspect of like honoring expertise and like allowing that certain expertise to do what they have to do and upholding the responsibilities of other people's expertise. Again, why am I filling out a 105 question survey about behavior analysis on a student when I just was also told to track data for 3 months? Like, I've overextended my part.
Mm-hmm. I have a couple thoughts bouncing around in my head. One is a perspective to offer is thinking about if the next job you want to take is still within education, finding an administration that is fighting for the teachers or the mentors or the service providers. One perspective I can offer from yes is that that's definitely something I've decided we're gonna do is have the conversation with the funders about why we need to better support the mentors or any staff by better funding the operation so that one, there's more staff, and two, there are resources for those staff to do their jobs in ways that are effective. If you don't decide to do that, then I do think a lot of times you end up asking your staff to record more data. That's seen as the solution to getting more funding is, well, if we show them all of this data about the problem, then they're more likely to give us money. And in a lot of cases, they will. The issue that you're obviously experiencing is it creates an overload on the staff and the teachers because you have to collect data about problems that you see every day instead of being provided solutions or resources or support to actually solve said problems. And that just makes it untenable. And it's kind of no surprise when you look at it through that lens that there have been so many teachers that have left, particularly the second grade, which is, I feel like those younger ages, you need more to be able to pay more patience and attention to the students. So the more responsibility you have that takes you outside of that, the harder it becomes to actually do your job.
Yeah.
So that's maybe one thing I could offer is hopefully a lens we could help you think about when it comes to a next job is better looking for and asking questions to find out how the administration or lead team is supporting the teachers or the staff in having better ability and better resources to do their job.
Yeah. Certainly an interesting space. I was telling myself that over February break, I'm going to do my best to be in far more concrete space of starting to plan out what that next step is going to look like. It's not that I'm like completely opposed to teaching, but it certainly was just a stepping stone from the beginning. As I had shared since like sophomore year with you, like 3 years max, and then administration,
Yeah.
school funding, or like going to education outreach or starting a school, like those have always been more of the end goals. But yeah, this year has certainly expedited that. So oh, and speaking of, because my roommate is also in a similar situation, she was like, yeah, it's time to wrap it up, which is crazy because she definitely always is like, I'll be the 50-year-old teacher who loved every I'm like, ah ha ha. But we literally like found our way on the side of TikTok of teachers going into various other career paths based on like degree and certifications that they've already attained.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been interesting. Like education technology and instructional designers and like various consulting types. So just thinking about that, but then we also were like, dang, our most recent scholarship or grant, I guess, was the Teach grant. And part of the Teach grant, I don't know if you're familiar, is that you sign a contract that you have to teach for, I don't know if it's 2 years or 4 years if you accept the money,
Yeah.
or you have to pay it back. But there's like parameters. So we were trying to find our explicit contracts because there's like various versions that are like online.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find the exact thing, like the email confirmation contract, but we didn't do enough digging. But literally the other night, we were just like, dang, I ain't got no $6,000 to pay back.
Mm-hmm. They should send it to you too.
That's what I'm saying. We searched it like real generally in our email, but it just was like, you have been accepted. Well, like, like next steps, like how when you do like FAFSA, it's like the complete email or like, yeah. So we couldn't find the actual contract, but we'll have to do some digging.
Mm.
Yeah. That's how they get you. But I never really understood like, oh, that's kind of harsh if you're saying it like that. Like, of course people are gonna go ahead and fulfill those like few years. Like 2-3 years is not that long. But now I understand because the teacher retention rate is tragic, literally all across America. And so now it makes sense why they're trapping people literally with money and hindering them in debt if they don't stick it out, because they know that being a teacher is a dying trade.
You can only list negative incentives.
Yeah.
You make less money off it. You're likely to have like a very low or minimal raise in pay over a lifetime of the career.
Yeah.
You have to deal with more shit because you don't have as much support to do your job. So you've got to deal with curriculum, you got to deal with data, you got to deal with kids, you got to deal with parents, like all the things you were listing off earlier that you're just expected to do that are unfair and outside of the job. And there's no like social return or benefit. You know, we don't like value our teachers. It's not like there are like lots of different discounts in society. It's not like you could just go online and it's all these companies have discounts if you're like a teacher for like buying stuff. Like there's no social value either. So it's like,
nope.
Why would I do this again?
For the kids. The kids that be saying F you. Okay.
Yeah.
Not my kids wouldn't dare, but there are kids in that school that are buck wild to them teachers, and I feel bad. I really go into my classroom as the African auntie. They know not to play with me. The way they address me is yes, Miss Olivia, excuse me, Miss Olivia, no, thank you, Miss Olivia, and okay, Miss Olivia. Other than that, I'll literally ignore them, and they know. And so that's why everybody's like, "Oh, you really have your clothing room on lock?" No, I installed respect in them because y'all just let them act any which way to you all, and just like, "Oh, stop!" No. But I literally sent one of my students to pre-K the other day. I was like, "Oh, you want to act like that? Go to pre-K." And you're like, "No." I'm like, "You're telling me no?" The African auntie came out. I said, "Who are you telling no? You want to act like that? Go to pre-K." So I had one of my other students, dedicated aide, walk him to pre-K. I gave him his work and I said, "Don't come back until you're done." He was over here crying. I'm like, "Yeah, cry. And I can guarantee you for the rest of the week, he was on his P's and Q's. "Excuse me, Miss Olivia. Yes, Miss Olivia. Okay, Miss Olivia. And no, thank you, Miss Olivia." That's it. But no, these kids be really wild to some of these teachers. Not me. Not me.
Reminds me of the one time in homeschool when I like refused to do my work. And at lunchtime, we were like, I was so excited to eat my lunch. My mom was like, "You're not eating." It's like, you didn't do any work. You don't get to eat. I was like gutted. I was like, "You're not going to feed me?" She's like, "You'll be fine."
Yeah, you'll be okay.
That was definitely the last time that ever happened.
Yeah. And it's like, it's sad because a lot of the behavioral issues that come into the classroom, like impulse control, really it's impulse control, like start at home. And so a lot of the like basics is like, how do you tell a parent that your kid has no home training? That's why they're not successful in this classroom. Because if I'm reinforcing respect and discipline in the classroom, but then they go home and they can just act, do, and say whatever they want. What type of message is that sending? Not only to your child in the light of you, but the child in the light of me in school. But also my students know, like, if you respect me, I will respect you. Like, our classroom is a fun environment. Like, I integrate just about anything and everything that they want. I don't know if I had mentioned it in a past episode, but like my students are very versatile. They're 7 going on 17. So it's a very mixed social emotional development that I have in my class. Like, I have kids that are really more like on the 7 scale, like typical 7-year-olds. But I have those that are more like 8, where they're very independent and like getting into themselves and like embarrassed to do things. Yeah, so it's very interesting to see how that plays out. And on top of that, I'm also the teacher that supports you outside of the school. Like, literally tomorrow, I'm going to one of my students' basketball games. One of my students was in the Nutcracker, and I went. So it's like we have a good relationship, but it's based on respect and boundaries on both ends. Now, if I could establish that level of communication and respect with my administration, I may be in this profession a little bit longer. But hey, in that space, I'm not in charge. So
I mean, the first thing I literally thought of is just like, I don't know if it's a one-to-one, but it just made me think of like getting out of an abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, you're just like, I can't keep doing this.
You can't. It's not sustainable. And like, there was points where my dad was just like, I don't understand why you don't just quit. And I'm like, if I quit here, it's going to be worse for me to go and apply somewhere else. I'm going to have absolutely no motive to try this again somewhere else. Like, might well stick it out where I'm miserably familiar than miserably unfamiliar and take that risk to just make things even worse. Especially because I've seen basically the domino effect of not only a teacher leaving, but also a teacher coming in, and how literally it doesn't work. After a certain point of time, I feel like after the first month, maybe second month, it's basically going to be really, really hard for you to kind of catch the pacing, especially at a school that has high expectations, both for the staff and students. Like, there is no way. So I said, I'm going to stick out my little 1 year. It's cute. I can put it on my resume, make enough connections, but don't get too close to nobody and skedaddle.
At the end of the day, what really makes teaching work is what you pointed out is maybe not happening sometimes is you and the parents aren't in sync on the training that the kids are getting. And in like older history of education in America, that was more common because everyone lived in the same town.
Yeah.
Like, you had a schoolhouse. So like everyone like knew everyone, and the teachers and parents being in sync on the training was more likely to happen. And maybe you leaving presents an opportunity to actually even do that in a more effective way, because for some of the parents it'd be like, hey, like, I'm not going to be teaching her anymore, but I still know your kid really well, and I could still tutor them.
That's a great idea.
And I was thinking that could actually be like interesting too, because in the place you're in, if there's some parents that can't pay, I wouldn't be surprised if there are some parents in DC that value education and would like pay for the tutoring fees for a student that couldn't afford it.
I'm gonna go ahead and take note. That's a great point.
The whole point is like having community, and if you're like already going to events like that for your kids, like there are totally ways to continue that in a way that's beneficial for you, like in terms of providing a livelihood for yourself, and for the kids in terms of developing. With so much that's not happening in education, it's ripe for innovation, and it's ripe for people like you, particularly, who are passionate about it, to educate in ways that are monetarily more effective for them and provide better service for the students and or athletes that they're trying to help.
Lots to think about.
Yeah, don't stress too much.
Yeah, it's just so much. This has just been a very interesting past 6 months. Very interesting. A very developmental 6 months, but certainly not in vain. Certainly not in vain. So just now curating all that I've learned, how I've grown, and redirecting that energy in places where I'm more valued is the next step.
Definitely.
Yeah, it is my birthday month, though. I was told my students explicitly. But I was telling them, I said, this month is Black History Month. It's Miss Olivia's birthday month. So I am Black History, and I'm going to make history as a class, and we're gonna be chill. We're gonna actively try to have good days on purpose. We're gonna be looking for it. So I'm just trying to, like make small wins, and we have our little week break. Then I'm actually going to Disney, so like I have things to look forward to.
Oh, are you going to Disney World?
Yeah, my boyfriend and I are going to Disney World, and I haven't been to any Disney. My little African household, we have never gone there. But now that was just like my birthday, part of my birthday gift. So I'm excited. So that's a fun thing to look forward to. But after that, I need to make another thing to look forward to. That's what keeps you going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm gonna live the American dream. We're going to Disneyland. Oh no, Disney World, Disney World. So we're gonna get a chance to go to all the parks and then come back and rest for 3 days before I have to go back to that treacherous school.
Well, thanks for the catch up as always and for another episode.
Okay. Signing out on February 3rd, 2023.
This episode was made possible in part by Greylock Federal Credit Union, Yes board member Chris Flores, Jamie Harvey, CEO of Agillion, and Ellen Gabriels, a Yes donor. Thanks for listening, and be sure to tune in to episode 4.